The Rambam in Halachot Bet and Gimel, in the first chapter of Hilchot Tefillah, goes on to explain how this mitzvah was accomplished originally, from the time that Moshe Rabbeinu taught us the Torah. And the Rambam says first, Lefikach nashim v'avadim chayavin b'tfilah, lefi shemitzvat aseh shelo azman grama. He says women certainly have to daven. The exclusion, based on the fact that a mitzvah is a mitzvah aseh shazman grama, like the mitzvah of sukkah, the mitzvah of lulav, which take place at a certain time of the year, this is not true about tefillah. The mitzvah of tefillah is obligatory every day of the year at no particular time. Right? Ela chiyuv mitzvah zo kachi. This is how I, the Rambam, describe the obligation that we're referring to. Sheyeh adam mitchanein u'mitpalel. A person should speak to God and should supplicate heaven on certain matters. Magid shivcho shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he should praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu, v'achak shoel tzrachav, and after that, he should ask for the things that he needs, that he feels he is missing. Shehu tzarich lahem bevakasha u'tchina. And afterwards, so the first part of the tefillah, the introduction, has to do with the praise of God. The second part of tefillah is when you ask God for the things that you think you are missing. V'achar kach notein shevach v'odaya l'Hashem al tova sheshpi'a lo kol echad lefi kol. And the third part of tefillah is when you thank God for all the goodness that He has bestowed upon you. So that the Rambam teaches us that even during that time in history, when there was no text of the Shemona Esrei, before the takanot, the various takanot that produced the Shemona Esrei that we use today, even in that time, there was an outline, a general formulation that was learned from tefillot of various kinds in the Chumash and the Tanakh, that you begin by praising God, you continue by asking for the things that you need, and you finish by thanking God for the goodness that He has bestowed upon you. An obvious question is, of course, that the Shemona Esrei ends with the bracha, Sim Shalom Tova Uvracha. And the bracha is Hamevrech et Amo Yisrael Bashalom, which certainly sounds like a request and doesn't sound like Hodaya, like thanking God. But if you think about it, I imagine you'll be able to solve that question on your own. The Rambam continues and he says, in those days, in the days after Moshe Rabbeinu, if a person was able, he had the language capacity to stand before God and to continue to ask and to beg and to describe the nature of God. He says that person would certainly be able to daven more than once a day. But if a person was aral sfatayim, this is the words of the Rambam, like Moshe Rabbeinu is called aral sfatayim. He says if he was aral sfatayim, then he only davened minimally. He davened as much as he had to daven, the once a day. But if a person had a great capacity in language, if a person was able to speak to God freely because of this capacity that he had, then he would daven many times each day. And everybody who davened, whether they davened only once a day to fulfill the minimal requirement, or they davened many times a day, because after all, that is the best use that you can put the talent of language to, they always davened facing the Beit HaMikdash, in every case. Right? And then the Rambam ends his historical overview of this point. He says, this was how people davened from Moshe Rabbeinu until Ezra. Ezra, I remind you, was the one who led Bnei Yisrael back to Eretz Yisrael after the Babylonian exile. The date, Ezra returned to Eretz Yisrael about 535 BCE. So from the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, time of Matan Torah, until 535 BCE, everybody was able to daven on his own or on her own without having a prompt, without using a siddur. Some people were better at it than others, and the ones who were better at it took advantage and davened even more than once a day. But everybody was able to conjure up the language which would enable them to daven, according to the Rambam, at least once a day and fulfill the mitzvah min haTorah.